On the night from Friday to Saturday, a dug-up grave was once again found at the local cemetery. The coffin turned out to be empty. However, no bodies were found anywhere nearby, the announcer reported. On the other side of the screen, I tiredly rolled my eyes and turned to my mother. "Mom, maybe that's enough of watching this nonsense." She snorted at me and then added, "Don't you understand? That's the very cemetery where your father is buried. And he's been lying there for over a year already, and that corpse hunter is only interested in fresh graves. Oh, I hope you're right. We really don't need something like that. I don't think there's any reason to worry about it. All right, I'm going to Olga's place. Something happened there. Are you going anywhere?" "No, Mom, I'll stay home." "Good. Call me if anything happens." I obediently nodded and turned off the zombie box. Anna slowly left the apartment building. She wasn't going to Olga's today. The final destination of her route was the local cemetery. The drive took about 40 minutes. At that time there were few cars on the city streets. Sunday morning, after all. She parked her car not far from the cemetery gates. Then walked over to one of the vendors selling artificial flowers and continued on foot. Although she hadn't yet reached the grave, she noticed that there were suspiciously few people around. It was strange, considering it was a day off. They're probably still sleeping, Anna reassured herself. When she reached the burial site she needed, she was already on edge. Not only had the sky completely clouded over, but there wasn't a soul nearby. The atmosphere felt oppressive, as if straight out of a horror story. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a crow's caw. The bird, quietly sitting on a branch, suddenly screamed and flew away. Anna got scared and sharply flailed her arms, then almost ran to her late husband's grave. "Hi, my love. Here I am," she said, knocking on the headstone and sitting down right next to it, hoping it would feel calmer that way. She held onto the granite stone with one hand, and at the same time told her late husband how things were going in their family. "And Ilyushka at least fixed his grades after your death. It was very hard for him. He only recently recovered. I didn't take him with me, too early for that." "Miss, you dropped this," a voice sounded behind her. Anna screamed in fright and turned around. Behind her stood a short man. He didn't look like a beggar. There were plenty of those at cemeteries. On the contrary, the stranger made a pleasant impression. He was holding out a mobile phone that had fallen out of her pocket. After I finished all my homework and was about to mind my own business, I heard the click of the lock. Damn, why is she home so early? That's strange. She usually stays at Aunt Alia's until evening. Maybe they had a fight. "Mom!" I shouted, leaving my room. "What, Ilyusha? Why are you home so early?" "Well, it just turned out that way," she hesitated. "Aunt Alia had some unexpected things come up." "Did you do your homework?" "Yeah, just finished." From that day on, Mom was constantly disappearing somewhere, staying late at work, going to visit Grandma and Grandpa, or going to a friend's place. In general, I hardly saw her. But it was unlikely she suddenly had a ton of errands. She was probably seeing someone and didn't want to tell me. One weekend, she was also getting ready to leave. And already standing in the hallway, she said, "Ilya, lock the door after me." "Where are you going?" "Larissa invited me over. I'll drop by for a couple of hours." "All right. Bye." "Bye, Mom." I locked the door behind her. Looks like she went to her suitor again, I thought. Well, that's her personal business. And about 2 weeks later, that very personal business showed up at the door of our apartment. "Meet Igor." My mom introduced the stranger. I hesitantly held out my hand. He firmly grabbed my wrist and started shaking it. "And you must be Ilyuka." "Yeah. Nice to meet you," he said cheerfully and winked at me. I was already about to retreat to my room when Mom suddenly announced, "Sit with us. We're going to have tea." The whole time we drank tea, Igor mostly told stories. They were pretty entertaining and funny. Overall, he behaved normally, didn't lecture about modern youth, didn't say anything nasty, and was polite to both me and my mom. But something about him felt wrong. I don't even know how to explain it. He was somehow repulsive, though I couldn't figure out exactly what it was that bothered me. When Igor left, Mom asked what I thought of him. I lied and said everything was great. Now I understand that was a huge mistake. It would have been better to tell the truth. From that day on, Igor started coming over more and more often, and then somehow quietly moved his things into our apartment. He didn't do anything bad to me. On the contrary, he tried to be friendly, and I tried to force myself to take a step toward him, but I couldn't. Something stopped me. After a while, I realized he wasn't as perfect as he wanted to seem. In general, it was a small thing, could have been worse, but it still stood out. The thing was, Mom and I had near-perfect order at home. Even my room was clean, and even though I was a teenager, I didn't like mess. But my stepfather, unlike us, was not neat at all. It wasn't noticeable right away. First, he'd leave his plate on the table instead of putting it in the sink. Then he started scattering his things all over the apartment. Mom gritted her teeth and tried to keep things in order like before, but it became difficult. One day, when I came home from school, I saw Igor sprawled on their shared bed in his outdoor clothes and shoes. I thought he felt sick, or maybe he was drunk. I immediately ran up to him and started shaking him. When he opened his eyes, I bombarded him with questions. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Ilya, is that you?" he calmly asked. "Why did you decide I'm unwell?" "Well, you're just lying on the bed in your clothes." "Oh, that? And what exactly bothered you?" I froze. Did Mom pick him up at a landfill or something? He doesn't look like a homeless guy. Then why does he allow himself this? You know what? Maybe in your own home you've turned it into a dump, but we had order here before you came. We're not pigs. This isn't a pigsty, got it? Yeah, got it, he calmly replied. Why are you shouting? When Mom came home from work, I immediately told her what happened, but contrary to my expectations, I was met with misunderstanding. Listen, Lyosha, I understand it's not easy for you without your father. But try to understand me too. I'm still young, and I don't want to be alone. Yes, Igor isn't perfect and will never replace your dad. But you aren't perfect either. So be more tolerant. Mom, can't you see? I shouted. But she didn't listen. She just said the conversation was over. Fine. Sooner or later. She'll get tired of this herself, I reassured myself. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at home only grew tenser. I noticed my stepfather behaving strangely. One night, I went to the bathroom and saw Igor standing and staring out the window. I didn't pay much attention, sleepy and all. But in the morning, he was still standing there. He only moved when I came into the kitchen for breakfast, interrupting him. Oh, you're up already? He asked in confusion. It's not early. I have school. Oh, right. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could he not sleep all night and just stare out the window? Maybe he was sick. Or maybe I imagined it. Mom continued pretending everything was fine, though sometimes raised voices could be heard from the bedroom. They were arguing. Mom became nervous and irritable. While he didn't seem to care at all, I noticed he'd basically stopped trying. He wasn't looking for a job because Mom was supporting all of us. This didn't make her happy. In arguments, she sometimes mentioned it. But it always ended with Igor swearing that he'd start looking for work tomorrow, and Mom believed him every time. Lately, I wanted to go home less and less. I preferred hanging out at friends' places or wandering the streets. Another weekday was no exception. After school, I went to the local mall and hung out there for a couple of hours before heading home. Mom said she'd go somewhere after work and wouldn't be home until around 10, if not later. After hearing that, I didn't want to go home at all, but there was nowhere else to go. I was hungry and homework needed doing. Entering our yard, I involuntarily looked at the windows of our apartment. Now I truly understood the phrase, I can't believe my eyes. Across from the window stood Igor. He was sharpening a sharp knife, the one we used to cut meat. When he saw me, he smiled widely, showing all his teeth, and lightly drew the knife across his throat. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called Mom. I had to tell her everything. Ilya, maybe that's enough already, she asked tiredly. Enough of what? Of this. Mom, he's standing at the window right now with a knife. All right. Send me a photo. I hung up and turned on the camera. But as soon as I aimed the phone at our window, Igor turned his back, and then walked away. For the first time in my life, I was truly scared. This wasn't ordinary fear. It was something else entirely, something that twisted me inside. I stayed on the bench in front of the building, trying not to run into him, waiting for Mom. When her car drove into the yard, I ran to her. But she didn't feel the same way. She snapped at me, accused me of trying to break them up, and said that if it continued, she'd stop talking to me altogether, or even send me to Grandma and Grandpa. I had no choice but to stay silent. Igor continued wandering at night, making a mess, and living off my mother. As for that incident, I never saw anything like it again. Maybe I imagined it. My relationship with Mom and my stepfather deteriorated. So I decided to spend almost all my free time studying. For the first time in my life, I didn't want the holidays to come, I'd have to spend a whole week next to that parasite. He stayed home all day doing absolutely nothing. I tried not to pay attention to him until one moment. One morning, I went to wash up. Apparently, he didn't notice me. My stepfather took meat out of the freezer and started gnawing on it with his teeth. From the hallway, everything was perfectly visible. He viciously bit into the frozen meat, pulling it toward himself. The meat cracked as it tore away from the bone, but that didn't bother him at all. He devoured it with such appetite as if it were foie gras, not an icy chunk of pork. When he had almost stripped the bone clean, I felt dizzy and weak. I quietly tiptoed back to my room. What the hell is that? Is he sick? I wanted to tell Mom everything. But at the last moment I put the phone away. She probably wouldn't believe me again. If she liked living with a sick bastard, fine. I'd move in with Grandma and Grandpa after the term ended. Until evening, I avoided my stepfather and only came out to use the bathroom. Even when Mom came home, I didn't come out to meet her. What is this, Ilya? Come here right now, she shrieked angrily. I silently walked out. At the kitchen doorway, I saw Mom pointing at a gnawed bone lying on the table. I shrugged. It's a bone. I can see that. Where did it come from? What's it doing here? Ask Igor. You're doing this on purpose to make us fight. Fine. I'll call him. I thought a grown man would find the courage to admit what he'd done. But no. He denied everything. Mom got angry and stopped talking to us. After that, I kept a low profile and stayed in my room. On the weekend, I planned to go to Grandma and Grandpa's, but on Friday afternoon, Grandpa called. Grandson, it won't work this weekend. Grandma's sister, Aunt Tom, got very sick and her son, you know him, is useless and serving his third term. So we're going to her. Saying I was upset would be an understatement. I wanted to tell Grandpa everything but bit my tongue. This wouldn't help my relationship with Mom. Instead of visiting my grandparents, I went to a friend's place and stayed overnight. The next morning, Mom texted saying she'd meet a friend and come home after 4. So I stayed longer and left my friend's place at 5 in the evening to be sure Mom would be home. But the apartment was empty. I collapsed on the couch and turned on a movie on my phone. Suddenly, I heard the front door open. I paused the movie and went to the hallway. I thought Mom had come back, but I was wrong. Igor had arrived. I quietly closed my bedroom door and put one earbud in. It seemed like he was dragging something across the floor, maybe a bag or something similar. At first, scrolling through the news distracted me, but soon I got bored. I put the phone aside and stared at the ceiling. Then strange sounds reached my ears. Igor was rustling in bags. Then something heavy dropped, either thuds or blows, and then everything went silent. What is that psycho doing? I lay motionless, barely breathing. I don't know how long passed before my stepfather got dressed and left. After waiting a few minutes, I tiptoed into the hallway and crept into the kitchen. Sharp chest pain, loss of sensation, and dizziness, that's what I felt when I entered. A body lay on the kitchen floor, with its belly ripped open and limbs cut off. The head was lying separately. Clothes stripped from the corpse were in the sink. Walls, floor, curtains, cabinets, even the ceiling, were splattered with blood. I ran to my room and, with shaking hands, dialed Mom. Hello? Mom? Mom, what is it? Mom, I don't know how to explain this. Just speak already, she hissed irritably. Igor brought a corpse home, I blurted out. Are you out of your mind? Mom, don't you understand? I'm not joking. All right. Igor isn't home. He went somewhere. I'm coming. I'll be there in 5 minutes. She really did arrive in 5 minutes and demanded an explanation right in the hallway. Tears streamed from my eyes. Don't believe me? Then go look in the kitchen. Seconds later, a piercing scream came from the kitchen. Mom ran out, lost her balance and fell. We can't stay here, she screamed. Let's run outside. I shouted. But instead of getting up, Mom suddenly went quiet and leaned against the wall. I listened. Someone was opening the door to the vestibule. Without a word, we rushed into my room. I locked the door from the inside, and together we pushed the couch against it. Anya, are you home? That bastard's voice came from the hallway. Yes, Mom answered reluctantly. Then come out. I missed you. My insides trembled. I felt like I was about to faint. My wrists went numb, my body shook. He started pounding on the door, screaming that we open up or he'd kill us. The door shook under his blows. He screamed like a madman, shouting curses. I thought sooner or later the door would give way. But salvation came. Sirens wailed. Blue lights flashed through the windows. The monster immediately fled. It turned out that Mom had called the police after my call. During the investigation, it was discovered that the corpse had no fixed place of residence. He had just been buried, and the very next day the grave was dug up. No one would miss him, so Igor brought the body straight to our home. It also turned out that Igor had been convicted multiple times and had been registered with a psychiatrist. His issues were identified in early childhood and only worsened with age. Maybe if he'd had normal parents, the tragedy wouldn't have happened. But his mother drank, his father drank too, and liked to chase them around the apartment with a knife while drunk. This time he was locked up again, but not in prison, in a psychiatric hospital. Mom asked if I'd mind if we moved away. Mom, are you kidding? I'm all for it. Good. Then we're going to a hotel now. Look for an apartment for the time being, and put this one up for sale. That's the best decision. You know, I've wanted to ask, why didn't you kick him out earlier? Honestly, other than filth and laziness, I didn't see anything bad in him. And where did you even meet him? At the cemetery. Everything became perfectly clear. I just nodded and ran to my bedroom to pack my things.